Okay, so, and your time starts now.
So many of you will be familiar with the idea of using games to learn at work. We talk about using simulation games and the concept of serious play. But I want to talk about an extension to this, the idea of agile games. And I don't mean games where we learn about agile. So if you look at any theory around adult education, you'll see Bloom's taxonomy, which says there are 6 levels of learning, right? But there's actually 3 dimensions to it. But we usually just talk about the cognitive dimension and the 6 levels of learning that you can use when you're teaching adults. So at the lowest level, there's the pedagogical, there's just me getting up here talking to you, blah, blah, blah. This is Bloom's level 1 that I'm doing right now, right? And then at level 2, we'll try and validate you learn something, but at level 3, it's immersion, like a game. So we still need theory and practice. This is Cherry's last gig in Vietnam. Seriously. So we need theory and practice, so we can do some game and we can do some theory, and it doesn't matter what order we do them in, we still need both, but the game gives us that experiential level of learning where they go through some sort of emotional journey and they learn how new ways of working can make them so much better at what they do. And this is a very powerful way to learn. So some games are quite small, they can just be a few minutes. You've all seen those sort of games where people just learn one thing with a real quick bang type of lesson. Other games can be much longer, a day or even a couple of days. So there we go, there's a whole day game in my favourite place, the Wellesley Hotel in Wellington, and a wonderful learning space. And we can take people through a whole journey through the day and really tear them apart and put them back together again. So a couple of the famous games you might have come across is the Phoenix Project, which is a DevOps simulation, and now there's the Mars Lander, which is an Agile service management simulation. And these are really powerful ways to get people into the space. It's a safe space where people can practice where it doesn't matter, right? Where they can learn and experiment with peers and without any real consequence, because it's all just, at the end of the day, it's all just plastic on a table. But the challenge with some of these games is they're very scripted, right? The game has a clear script, a clear sequence of things that are going to happen through the course of the game. In each round we're expecting to bring out certain learnings and we're going to introduce certain interventions specifically. And so that can actually limit our flexibility in some of these games, right? If we very clearly know that we're going to play these cards in this round and these cards in this round, and even in this case the software is structured around a certain structure to the game, then that can be limiting. So we've got a game that we've built called Diggers, right? Which is where people build Lego diggers. And it's a 1 or 2 day learning simulation and so we started running these games, these Diggers games, and we can take people through. I extended the game so that we can have different modes, right? They can be a little business startup, they can work projects, factory, or custom agile iterative ways of building these diggers, you see. So here's a really custom one, you see. And that was great, but when we played the game, we'd get the situation where someone would say, hey, why don't we just kit all the parts up ahead of time? We go, hold that thought for around about round 4, because that's a really good idea, but maybe we'll look at it in round 4, because we had this specific script to the game. So I thought, hang on, we're trying to teach people agile, and we've got this rigid script to a game. This doesn't work. The game itself ought to embody the principles of agile. So it's iterate and increment experiment. So therefore we rebuilt the game so we can play an emergent story. We've got all these pieces to the game that we can just click on at will. So if somebody says, why don't we kit all the parts? We say, all right, kit the parts, bam, we'll have some Kanban boxes and we'll kit the parts. Oh, wouldn't it be better if we split in 2 teams? Oh, let's do that. So not only that, when we play the game, we announce up front that we are experimenting. So in every game, we'll try something new, right? Even dynamically, someone will say, blah, 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 I never thought of that, let's try that, let's go with that. So we warn them that we're experimenting, which means that we, as facilitators, are vulnerable. We're getting up the front, we say, hey, this could all screw up because we're constantly experimenting with this game. We're not getting up there saying, we are so much cleverer than you and we are now going to lead you through this thing. So that vulnerability builds trust, and I think it makes for an even more powerful game, because the game itself is constantly improving and growing, and we're going on a journey with the people rather than directing them. We're just sharing the experience with the people playing the game to get to a result. So I think this is quite an interesting concept, this idea of agile games where we walk the walk of agile.